you know, I mean, the camera just works. I guess is really, it's not a very exciting thing to say, but it just works. I mean, this is it, you know. This actually, I've never seen this before, but this is a B4 PL mount adapter, which is why it's a little strange here, because that's the extension of the adapter. We shot with Cabrio with just PL mount lenses, although this is an interesting idea to have the B4 mount. But that's the whole package. Camera head, recorder section, audio section, no cables, no wires, no muss, no fuss. Viewfinder is great. I found myself immediately taking advantage of one of the nice things about the finder is that you can use it as a finder, as an eye level, as a waist level finder down here, or if it's flipped out this way, the assistant can see the image and you can do some fairly decent follow focus right off of that. So it makes it really great if you're just trying to move fast.
How was the eyepiece for the EVF for checking focus?
It's very good, and it's got a range of different peaking options in it that as good as any I've seen. I mean, I always want them to be sharper, but I think they've done a better job than any I've seen.
Tell us about the balance. It's got an adjustable shoulder pad, it has an adjustable handle. Was that useful to you?
Absolutely. I mean, Gunter set it up for me, so I'm not even sure how all the different pieces work, but basically it's completely, this axis moves, so this plate moves, the top handle moves, and the eyepiece moves in and out, so you can get it balanced anywhere. I mean, I was using a Cabrio, which is not my favorite lens at all, partly just because it's so front heavy. And every time I've used it on a C500 or an R55 or another camera, I find that I'm spending all my time trying to support the front of the camera. On this camera, being able to move everything around is no problem. I can get it perfectly balanced easily. Obviously, one would have to shift the balance for different lenses, though when one is working handheld, you tend to have one, maybe two lenses. Because the Cabrio wide end is a 19, I knew that I wanted some wide angle stuff, so I thought about the 14. And some of what you think might be Steadicam is literally just running with the camera, you know, chasing kids on skateboards, or you know, putting the camera down on the ground, pulling out the side finder, you know, those things. When to change from shooting at 24 frames a second to shooting at 200 is that, and if you need to change your, this is a little bit away, but if you need to change the ND, there's a switch right here. So literally in 10 seconds, you can go from 24 frames to 200 frames with no other bump, nothing else you have to do, which I found amazing. And so I was able to shoot a Verite 24 frame piece and then reach over, switch these, get down on the ground, and shoot something in slow motion. And come right back. And I've never been able to do that with another camera. I mean, it just opens up that facility really nicely.
I think your assistants were amazed how quickly it was almost like the SR. You could just pull it out of the case and you're ready to go, and you can shoot right away without having to set it up.
Actually, a little more so because we never carried a lens on the camera in the case with an SR. We're always worried that the lens mount was going to get damaged in some way, so it's actually quicker. I mean, this is, you know, there's a, I don't know if it was just a custom thing Gunter had done, but there's a porta brace, which is exactly like the porta brace I carry my AMD camera in, and that's it. You put the camera in, pull it out. I don't know what the current boot up time is. I think it was around 15 seconds. When we last used it, I think they were working on getting it down a little bit.
There's an upgraded Plan 5EC that has significant faster upload time.
Right. So that's really the only difference. If you've got a film camera, there's no boot up time. It's about 3 frames until you're up to speed from when you start. But other than that, there's no real delay.
You mentioned something earlier that was interesting we might want to discuss. A lot of, I think this is the first time, as far as I remember, that you used a full frame sensor for documentaries. You were mainly using 2/3 inch before.
Well, I mean, I've used full frame sensors for a number of them, but I've always been frustrated.
Right. And talk please about the challenge of focus with a full frame sensor and how this helped or hurt or addressed it. Because a lot of ENG guys, I think, are timid about using full frame sensors.
Sure. I mean, I think there are a couple of things. One is that this viewfinder is very sharp. It also has it has a whole range of peaking options, and I'm not the designer, so I can't even tell you what they all are. There's a color peaking, and there's, I would call it black and white peaking, a detail peaking.
There's a zebra.
Well, but zebras we wouldn't use for focus. But for focus, you need to basically set it to go to a range of different colors when the peaking sees something that it thinks is in focus and it's pretty accurate, or you can just use an enhanced detail. There's also magnification on the viewfinder, which can come in handy. As all these cameras, one has to be very careful when you hit magnify to know that you're in magnifiers. The camera tells you, but our brains don't always recognize that. In fact, Shauna Hagan, who's here, she and I share some credits on a film that Jessica used, and it was one of the first times I shot full frame 35, and I shot an entire scene with the magnifier on and didn't notice it. Luckily, it still worked, but it's just a little wider than expected. No, I think the viewfinder is very good, and what I really do appreciate about the camera is how thoughtful all the design elements are. So right here on the top of the viewfinder, there's a peaking button, there's an exposure button, and there are two assignable buttons. So if I'm being distracted by the red color peaking that I've chosen to use, it's off. If I want to check it, it's on. If I want to check exposure through false color or some other means, push the button, it's on, push the button, it's off. There's no menu fussing around at all. Magnification for this camera was set up, on the third button. So I want to check focus, get that, get rid of it. All those things were really nice, and the ability to flip this screen goes from being an image of the camera to being a menu driven piece of the camera, so that you or the assistant can get all the information you want right there without having to take the camera off your shoulder, go to the other side of the camera, which would be the problem with working with an Alexa in this one, is that all those things are on the assistant side. But if there's no assistant, it's really awkward. And, they've done a great job with that aspect, and you can play back through the viewfinder as well. The playback button is down here. You can search through clips, check and see what you've done. It plays back in whatever the slow motion you shot, so you get to see that in real time. It's pretty slick.
And did you want to say it or something? So tell us about exposure, because you have some pretty wide exposure ranges and dynamic range, and how did you determine your exposure?
Yes. Again, it was, Gunther was like, don't worry, you can't overexpose it. And I was like, yeah, right, sure. But pretty quickly I got used to the idea that it was pretty hard to overexpose. The camera handles highlights really beautifully, as well as any digital camera I've ever seen. Probably not any better than us. I think that we may look at the footage again. If you look at the shot of Adam skating through traffic at dusk, and look at the way the headlights play on the shiny reflective pieces of the black town car, and the way the headlights themselves handle detail, it's pretty extraordinary. That said, I kind of set up the viewfinder so that zebras were at about 55, 60, which is just what I'm used to. I don't want faces to go much over that, and that tends to be my basic thing. Then I just set the viewfinder, and basically if I like the way it looks, I shot. And if one looks at the footage in the playground, it's a very strong sunny day at that point. It didn't stay that way, unfortunately. And there's backlight coming through the green spring leaves and highlighting the backs of Adams and the kids' faces. And then the camera pans around to very bright, not white, but they're like bright yellow buildings on the other side of the park in full sunlight. With any ENG camera I would have been using, I would have been racking probably a stop and a half or so as I came around to hold that. I didn't do that at all. I thought about it, but then realized I didn't need to, and I started treating it like film. And what I mean by that is that, for me, one of the great beauties of shooting film is that once you know your film stock, you know your camera, you pretty much set an exposure for a situation and you let it go. You don't worry about, oh, this is a little darker, this is a little brighter, this is, is that gonna blow out? You kinda know what the film can do.